Tommy Robinson is more than likely going to die in prison. And does that matter to anybody in this day and age? By and large, the mainstream media does not care. Their view of Tommy Robinson is that he is some kind of racist, bigoted extremist who just plain doesn't like migrants, and because of his racism and bigotedness is dedicated to just hate speech and driving out people that he does not like. But because of his intent to raise awareness over the Muslim gang rapes that have been plaguing Europe over the last couple years, he is now rotting in a prison. The judge quickly handed down a sentence to him of 13 months for, I believe, breach of a previous sentence, his probation, and a certain amount of time for contempt, I think 3 months. This is how absurd the mainstream media has gotten. Anybody can be a journalist. That's their freedom. And we were all guaranteed the freedom of free speech, or the right of free speech. But we live in a time now where those in power are determined to silence anyone who might be dedicated to exposing the truths of what is really going on. We live in America, and we live in a place that is a little unused to the idea of Muslims washing over the entire country. It is not something that we are dealing with at this time. When people talk to us about immigration, our thoughts immediately go to Mexico and the crisis down there, our open border, the fact that so far President Trump has been unable to build a new wall, or not a new wall, a wall down there to contain our borders and help protect us. It's worth noting that in our country, while there is in Europe enormous amounts of problems with the migrants that have been washing through like a tidal wave, causing crime, stabbings, terrorist assaults, and rapes, it's worth noting that we also have similar issues here in America, although not with Muslims, with the Mexicans coming across the border. There have been widespread reports of rape and assault in Texas, Arizona, and other places. A lot of the ranchers in the Arizona and Texas area are routinely threatened or attacked or their property destroyed by illegal immigrants coming across the border. Coyotes, as they're called down near the Mexican border, are other, immigrants who have already come across and who are their job is to help ferry across other immigrants so that they can have passage into the country. It has been reported quite widely by many different news organizations and media, although very downplayed, by the way. The only media that you'll see actually reporting this are the, shall we say, those that would be viewed as extreme right-wing news organizations like Big League Politics or the Gateway Pundit or some others of that nature. Those are the ones that actually report the truth. And they have widely reported incidents involving the coyotes where they have actually gone and been raping in large numbers many of the women that they are helping to ferry across. Basically their own people. They're raping and assaulting sexually as they bring them across. These are very disturbing accounts, especially when you consider that the mainstream media is willfully turning a blind eye to it. And anyone that wants to shine a light on these incidences are accused of hate speech, they are accused of bigotry, they are accused of racism, and the like. If you talk today to anybody in the mainstream media of these incidents, a lot of times they will draw your attention immediately to President Trump's previous remarks that Mexicans are animals, which is not exactly what he said. He said MS-13 are animals. They will point to his comments about coyotes raping people and other such things. I believe Gavin McInnes brought that up in an interview. And as soon as you do bring these things up, a lot of the times you are laughed at And that's if you are not accused of being a racist, but you are laughed at and mocked as some kind of conspiracy theorist. Somebody who is just intentionally looking for one bad seed amongst many, many good people. That overall, the majority are not coming over here to cause issues, but just to seek out a good life. And for a great portion of them, this may very well be true. But in the pursuit of the safety of the American people, and in honesty, the pursuit of honesty and truth, we should not ignore the fact that there are also large portions of these people who are not coming here solely to live a good, normal life, but that are here with negative intentions, with bad intentions, with ill intentions towards America and the American people. Anyone who is our enemy and is looking at our country for weak spots it is so outside the realm of possibility that they may look at the Mexican border as such a weak spot. How hard is that to consider? Why? Why wouldn't they look at that as a weak spot in America? That if they were trying to come over here and hurt us, terrorist cells trying to get into America to hurt us, why wouldn't they come through Mexico if they could? I mean, they could come through Ellis Island, they could come through a lot of other places up by the Canadian border. There's a lot of different ways. And that only goes a short way, and a long way, and a medium way, in explaining why we need better border protection. It is common freaking sense. But back over in the UK, we draw our attention to Tommy Robinson, who is now in prison, just for trying to draw people's attention to what is actually happening with these migrant gangs of Muslims coming into Europe. I keep bringing this up. I've brought it up in other podcasts. I brought up Tommy Robinson in a previous one. I brought up the migrants that are annihilating European culture and putting in jeopardy thousands and millions of Europeans, putting their safety and their lives and their well-being in jeopardy. I've brought this up many times because it's a well-known fact that what goes on in Europe, by and large, particularly the UK, but by and large Europe, will, in a number of years, affect us here in America. You remember under President Obama, they were talking about bringing over a large number of Syrian, I believe it was Syrian refugees at a certain point, and we didn't want them here. And why would we? Why are we the ones that everyone's got to come to when things go to crap in the world? Why is Europe viewed that way? Why? I don't understand it. Why is it that we are always the ones that have to lend a helping hand when we have already done so much? There are many other countries that could be helping. Why doesn't China? Why doesn't Japan? Why doesn't India? Why doesn't Russia? You know? And people would say, well, these countries have their problems. You know, India has problems. Of course they do. China is a communist country. They're not going to let people in. So they want to protect their borders. So China does. So India's having problems. So they're not going to help anybody. But we're having problems too. Have you taken a look at the news lately? Have you seen the disarray and confusion and corruption that is currently exploding like a nuclear bomb in Washington? Have you looked at any of the crime statistics in America? Have you looked at the homeless figures in California and other places? We have plenty of problems of our own. We have a country divided straight down the middle between the right and the left. We have a Democrat Party so dedicated in their hatred to President Trump that they are willing to let another recession, the collapse of the American economy, come just to oust him out of office. Bill Maher said just as much on his show. That's what we have. We have plenty of problems on our own. Europe has plenty of problems on their own. It doesn't take much to figure that out. A brief perusal of the news will tell you that. And you just look at the unrest and the the strife that just the migrants are causing between European leaders. There's the local.it here has an article on it. Current issue between France and Italy. There is a ship apparently laden. Let me see here. I'll just read this. French President Emmanuel Macron attempted to resolve tensions with Italy on Thursday, saying he never meant to cause offense by criticizing its rejection of a migrant ship in remarks that sparked fury in Rome. You'll remember that there was a migrant ship that was attempting to land first in Malta and then in Italy, and Italy rejected it. The current Italian government has drawn a line in the sand and made it known that there is no more free ride for migrants in Italy. Their country is swamped. They cannot deal with any more migrants. It is causing strife, economic problems, and the people just plain don't want it. That's something that has gone largely ignored by everybody. The politicians and these bastard globalists that don't care what the people think. But we are supposedly living in democracies and republics. America is a constitutional republic. People call it a democracy, but it is not. It is a constitutional republic. But you have democracies in Europe. One of the greatest examples of a democratic system was Brexit over in the UK, where I believe 17 million people voted to leave the European Union. And currently, the UK government is doing everything in its power to give those 17 million people the middle finger and keep them in the European Union. Oh, they may very well leave, quote unquote, by next year, but they are going to stay within the trade union, I believe, and by and large, they will only be leaving in name only. This is a middle finger and a slap in the face to the English people, the British public that voted leave, and they were guaranteed and promised that they would get what they wanted when they voted, and they are far from getting that. But this migrant ship is trying to land in Italy, and Italy says there is no more migrants coming in. They tried to land in Malta, and Malta said no. So Macron said, let me see here. Macron had ignited the worst Franco-Italian diplomatic spat in years by accusing Rome of cynicism and irresponsibility for refusing to take in 629 migrants left stranded on a rescue ship that was eventually welcomed by Spain. So Spain eventually welcomed them. Well, I mean, whatever. Rome summoned the French ambassador and canceled a meeting between the country's economy ministers while threatening to call off talks between Macron and Italian Premier Giuseppe Conte in Paris on Friday unless France issued an official apology. But the tensions appeared to have ebbed after a telephone call on Wednesday night between Macron and Conte. The president stressed that none of his comments were intended to offend Italy and the Italian people, Macron's office said in a statement. Friday's lunch meeting between the two leaders will go ahead as planned, the statement added. Conte told reporters in Rome that the exchange was very cordial. Asked whether he thought the row was over, he said, "I very much think so, yes." Well, that particular row may be over, but it is only just the beginning. As more and more European countries wake up to the nightmare that is going on in front of them, they are going to come in with a clash of heads with other countries that are dedicated currently to the suicidal prospect of bringing in another wave, and that wave will be coming. Countries like Hungary, which, let me see, hardline EU ministers form Axis of the Willing against illegal migrants. This is channelnewasia.com. Berlin. The hardline interior ministers of Austria, Germany, and Italy have formed an Axis of the Willing, which is kind of ironic if you think back a couple generations. Anyway, to combat illegal immigration, Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz said Wednesday, escalating a Europe-wide row over the issue. The announcement by Kurz in Berlin after talks with German Interior Minister Horst Seehofer marks a shot across the bow at Chancellor Angela Merkel, who is trying to pull together a deal for EU cooperation on placing asylum seekers. And this is where further banging of the heads is going to happen with Chancellor Angela Merkel, who is a suicidal imbecile. It was Angela Merkel that said that Islam is our religion, Islam is a religion of peace, blah, 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 blah. And a few days later, a knife-wielding Islamist tried to stab her as she was getting into her car. Yeah, that's Angela Merkel. That's her common sense for you. Seehofer, who is locked in an open migration feud with Merkel that is threatening the stability of her coalition government, said that he and his far-right Austrian, Italian counterparts, Herbert Keitel and Matteo Salvini, formed their alliance this week. Their cooperation would extend to issues of security and terrorism, he said, but did not offer specifics on what it would entail. Kurz, whose country assumes the EU's rotating presidency on July 1st, said he would welcome the good cooperation, quote, the good cooperation that we want to develop between Rome, Vienna, and Berlin. I think that it marks very sensible cooperation that will contribute to reducing illegal migration to Europe, Kurz told reporters at a convivial news did I pronounce that right? Convivial. I think so. News conference with Seehofer, whose name I'm probably not pronouncing correctly, in marked contrast with a far more formal exchange he had with Merkel late Tuesday. Merkel just needs to go away. I mean, they need to put her on a boat, push it out to sea, and then accidentally sink it. That's what needs to happen with Merkel. We believe an access of the willingness needed to fight illegal migration. Now, I mean, that's all lovely and everything, and if he was over here in America, I'd clap him on the back and say, well done, and get him elected to some sort of position to abolish DACA or something over here in America, because we are desperately trying to fight illegal immigration or migration here in America from Mexico primarily. But that illegal migration is not the problem over in Europe. They are not drowning because of illegal migration per se. They are drowning over there because of legal migration. These countries, headed by people like the insane and stupid Angela Merkel, are legally bringing in millions and millions of people. Germany is not going to last if they continue and bring in another wave of migrants. It's just not going to happen. Sweden will not last. Sweden is tinkering on the brink currently. It will not last. Italy knows they won't last, and that's why they've said no more migrants. Okay? Hungary has said the same thing. Poland has said the same thing. Italy is actually considering possibly talking about it, at least. I was listening to Nigel Farage's podcast, and he was speaking with part of a member of the new government over in Italy. I forget the gentleman's name, and he was talking about the possibility of Italy leaving also the European Union. Now, hopefully they would learn something from their counterparts in Britain and actually leave in something other than name only. That would be nice for a change. People voting and actually getting what they want. Now, I know we voted for Trump and we got Trump, and that's all great. But there's still a lot of work to be done. If you just take a broad, half-assed perusal of what is going on with the Mueller investigation and the insanity, the overreaching, power-hungry, intimidating, bully-like mentality of Mueller, and particularly Rod Rosenstein, who lately just threatened the DOJ, I believe the House Intelligence Committee, saying he would investigate them, subpoena their records if they pursued demanding forms and documents from him that he actually owes them, according to FISA. It's such a mess. I've given up with the Mueller thing by and large. I wrote it off a long time ago, and I continually see the latest updates, etc., on Twitter. But it's madness, absolute madness. And the more that's revealed, the more it just becomes apparent that this is just rank, absolute, total corruption on the part of the FBI. Very clearly, they were working against Trump from the very beginning. This whole thing with Mueller is exactly that. It's a witch hunt. It is total crap. There is no truth to the collusion thing. If there was, they would have shown their hand a long time ago. Not too long ago, Mueller was coming out saying that he wanted this whole, I'll just put this thing, he said to Trump, I'll just put this thing away. It'll all end if you'll just sit down with me. Which I thought was very funny, because only a person who has nothing would say something like that. If he had something against Trump with collusion or anything really, obstruction, he wouldn't be saying things like that. He would be indicting President Trump. Instead, he comes out with this stupid little, kind of like dangling a carrot, like, I can make this all go away if you just sit down with me. Now, I could be totally innocent of a crime, but yet sit down in a room with Robert Mueller and come out on the other end guilty just because I slipped up in my wording. And that's exactly what he's hoping for with President Trump. He's hoping Trump will incriminate himself by saying something stupid or contradicting himself. He's hoping he will perjure himself, and that all this will not be for naught, which it is. President Trump has a smart man in Rudy Giuliani as his lead attorney. I do not believe he will ever end up in a room alone with Robert Mueller. And if he does, then we can kiss Trump goodbye, and it was a nice run. But I think that Giuliani is a little smarter than that and won't let that happen. We go back to the UK. And my initial reason for this particular broadcast, Tommy Robinson. Anyone who knows anything about what's going on with Tommy Robinson should be afraid. The fact that he is in prison is not because he violated his probation or any of that nonsense. It's not because he was putting a trial in jeopardy of becoming a mistrial by allowing jurors to hear as they walked by what he was saying as he was recording himself. This is the kind of stuff that's being reported by the mainstream news. I have an article here. Let me see. Now, originally, there's Kaolin Robertson. Is it Kaolin Robinson or Robertson? I'm going to get the guy's name. Hang on one second. I always get his name mixed up with Robinson, or is it Robertson? Kaolin Robertson, who is sort of Tommy Robinson's self-styled PR guy, his go-to guy, his right-hand man, his manager, if you will. Initially made the claim to Paul Joseph Watson and Alex Jones over at InfoWars that Tommy Robinson had been moved to a prison that had a 71% Muslim inmate population. Now, I don't think he intentionally misled anybody by saying that. I think a lot of what's going on is they are very frightened and afraid for Tommy Robinson, and so they are going to be prone to a little exaggeration. Any Muslim gang related population in any prison that Tommy Robinson is being held in right now is going to be viewed as a serious threat. That is not exaggerated. The fact that Islamist gangs in these prisons want to do harm to Tommy Robinson is not something that is being exaggerated. It is fact. They've assaulted him before when he was in prison. They kicked out all his teeth and put him in the hospital, trying to kill him. He's been threatened many, many, many times, countless times, by these people. They want him dead. The UK government is not unfamiliar with these facts. They are well aware of the jeopardy he is in. And they are well aware that putting him in a prison with any percentage of Muslim gang population is putting his life in jeopardy. I find it very ironic that he was sentenced and put in prison within a few short hours of his arrest, when countless others that are guilty in these Telford gang rape incidences have not yet been imprisoned, they have not yet been convicted, and it will be a long time before they are. And yet Tommy Robinson was put away right away, without a trial, without anything, just 13 months in prison right off the freaking bat. Now, a lot of people, because Keolan Robertson and Paul Joseph Watson and Alex Jones exaggerated the percentage of Muslim gangs in the prison where Tommy Robinson was, because they did that, a lot of mainstream media is taking that and running with it and saying that he's not really in jeopardy, that the far right is exaggerating the danger that Tommy Robinson is in, that this is all just a publicity stunt for Tommy Robinson, that it's just his side basically seeking, well, like I said, publicity and whatever else, trying to milk it for all it's worth, when really he's doing fine, he'll be okay. In 13 months, he'll be back out up to his normal shenanigans. This is how they're painting it. They're also painting it as it being fair that he was arrested because he was putting this trial at risk of mistrial by allowing jurors to hear him as he recorded himself on the front steps at the Leeds courthouse. This is just according to RT.com. Let's see. Robinson's cameraman and self-styled manager, Keolan Robertson, made the claim to Alex Jones on U.S. far-right conspiracy website InfoWars. I love how they always throw that in. Like everything Alex Jones does is a conspiracy. He doesn't report any facts. Oh no, everything he does is a conspiracy. That's a very nice way of just writing him off as nothing. The claims were also reported on Twitter by British InfoWars writer Paul Joseph Watson, who posted that Tommy Robinson has reportedly been moved to a prison with a 71% Muslim population. Inmates were banging on cell walls last night, shouting death threats, he said. Protests were ignored. Tommy now fears for his safety. His tweet was retweeted 13,706 times and liked on a further 18,477 occasions at the time of publication. He later clarified his comments, though it was unclear whether he was referencing anything other than Robertson's tweet, which read, Tommy said it looked around 70% Muslim on his wing. Does it really matter? Do the numbers like that really matter at the end of the day? It's a freaking tweet. People take tweets so damn seriously. It's a tweet. Like, think about that. I get my information from a tweet. I used to make fun of Twitter so much. I'm gonna go tweet, man. Tweeting is stupid. Anyone who takes a tweet seriously is a freaking moron. During his interview with Jones, Robertson told InfoWars that he'd been on the phone with the imprisoned Robinson, whose real name is Stephen Yoxley Lennon, and he had been told that the self-styled independent journalist had been moved from HMP Hall to a new prison. Robertson said that HMP Hall was relatively safe, but Robinson had been relocated to the main wing of a new prison. A tweet by Raheem Kassam. Update. Tommy's human rights are being violated as he was moved to a new UK prison last night without warning or reason. He is now in a very heavily Muslim-populated prison in the Midlands of England. #FreeTommy. We found the statistics of the prison and it's about 71% Muslim, Robertson said. Really, really, really disastrous. The last one was close to 1 to 2%. InfoWars also reported on its website that the ex-EDL leader, who is Tommy Robinson, had been moved to a prison located in the Midlands. The prison was rumored to be in the vicinity of Leicester. InfoWars host Alex Jones said that the claims were surreal, like something out of a fiction novel, and he was right. Prison statistics show that at the most recent inspection of HMP Hall, the Muslim population was 79 prisoners, or 7.4% of the 1,062 detainees. But what about HMP Leicester? Statistics show that the Muslim population there sits at 44, 14.3% of the 308 prisoners. As it happens, no prison in the country has a 71% Muslim population. After the discrepancy was pointed out to Robertson on Twitter, he quickly backpedaled, explaining that the figure was Tommy's estimate of the number of Islamists in his division within the new jail. This isn't the first time that Robinson fans have been accused of fake news. Breitbart editor and failed UKIP leadership candidate Raheem Kassam tweeted that the decision to move him from one prison to another was made by the UK Home Secretary Sajid Javid. I have to listen to their names actually spoken by somebody who can pronounce them. It's just awful. And the Home Office. However, the Ministry of Justice deal with prisoners, not the Home Office. Anyway, blah, 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 basically. And so that's how they write off anyone who has real concerns for Tommy Robinson. They look at little discrepancies with numbers from people like InfoWars and Paul Joseph Watson and Kaol Robertson, and they write this off as just the far right exaggerating and using this as a publicity stunt. When the real truth is that Tommy Robinson is not in prison because a few jurors might have heard half a syllable that he was speaking into his phone before they walked into the Leeds courthouse. He is not in prison because he violated his probation from a previous time when he was recording on a Muslim gang rape in front of another courtroom. He's not in prison for any of that. He is in prison because Tommy Robinson was using his free speech to raise awareness about a growing problem in Europe that the globalists and the current politicians are doing everything in their power to make you not know about, to hide it from you, to keep it out of view, to shut it down. They don't want you thinking about it. They don't want you hearing about it. They don't want you to know about it. And they damn well don't want you to do anything about it. To do anything about it. No, sir. A few countries over in Germany, part of the German government is currently in talks to ban news media coverage of migrant crime. Now, this hasn't actually been implemented yet, but it is something that is being discussed. Part of the German government, and I have no doubt that Angela Merkel is giving both thumbs up for this, the old Siskel and Ebert, they are thinking that, and they don't like the fact that a lot of the German news coverage is obsessed with the issues over migrants, that almost everything they report on is on migrant crime or economic issues brought on or social issues brought on by migrants. They think that the current news media in Germany is obsessed with this, and they are considering a full 1-year ban on any kind of coverage of migrants. If you think about that, how do they not think back till the 1940s or something like that? Just think back to the rise of Nazism and Joseph Goebbels. How can you ignore that? You're silencing your media. You're silencing your journalists. You are effectively shutting off information from getting to the people. Now, I mean, you can't ask, it's going to go one of two ways. Either the people are going to allow this to happen and the country will just eventually fall apart because they'll bring in more migrants and they obviously can't sustain that. And so the country will just fall apart along with the rest of Europe if they continue. Or the people will get very, very pissed off and there will be riots and bloodshed and possible civil war. One of those two things is going to happen if they implement a year-long ban on any news media covering the migrant issues going on in Germany. very, very bad idea for the German government if they want to stay in power and if they want their country to continue to be prosperous and grow. Well, I mean, first off, they should just stop the flow. But if they're not going to do that, curtailing or silencing their media coverage of the migrant issues, silencing the media from bringing news and information to the people, interviewing the people, letting them hear one another, and to hear what the politicians may be doing, either pro or con, in regards to the situation, is a very, very bad and dangerous idea. I do look with hope to countries like Italy, who have effectively, like I said, drawn a line in the sand and said that we will not allow this to continue. I look at Poland, I look at Hungary, and I look to normal people throughout Europe who are, in large degrees, rising up and realizing that we are being ignored, that these people who we have elected, who have promised to represent us, are not doing that. That people like Angela Merkel, people in the Swedish government, Theresa May, and the House of Lords, so many others in these European countries are blatantly going against the wishes of their citizens. They are ignoring them. And not only are they ignoring them, but they are openly defying them. And when those citizens rise and decide to speak up and speak to others and lead others in protest that they have every right to do, these are free people in free societies who are allowed to practice these freedoms. When people like Tommy Robinson stand up and do that, and when other people see that they are jailed for doing that, for expressing their free speech, for expressing their opinions, exercising their free speech and expressing their opinions, when people see that, when they see people disappearing and landing in prison on some trumped up stupid charges, you're setting the stage for a lot of unrest. A lot of dangerous things could be coming because of this. If Tommy Robinson dies in prison, which there is a high likelihood that he will, you can expect a tremendous amount of violence in the UK. You can expect riots. You can expect retributional violence on migrants as vengeance. You can expect a lot of negative things to happen if Tommy Robinson dies in prison, which if he is put in prison with gangs of Muslims, then the odds are that he will die in prison. Milo Yiannopoulos, whose podcast I listen to, he put out an episode not too long ago, a day or two ago, that was called Tommy Robinson Will Die in Prison, or Tommy Robinson's Gonna Die Soon. One of the two. Katie Hopkins has been very vocal in her support of him on her Twitter feed and in interviews. There are those in America who are really standing up for him too. There was a congressman that just gave a speech in regards to Tommy Robinson. Tucker Carlson has spoke on him. Even the execrable Ben Shapiro mentioned him, although Ben Shapiro is so out of touch with what's going on in Europe, and he's out of touch with anybody who's not an establishment figure, that he really didn't know much about Tommy Robinson at all. In fact, he, very ironically, called him a far-right figure, which is something that he has disdained. He has shown disdain for people calling him that, and he dished it out to Tommy Robinson. I don't know what, I know there's other figures like Mike Cernovich, who I think is an imbecile and just a total waste of time. I don't follow any, in fact, I am very proud of the fact that Cernovich has me banned on Twitter. I took that as a badge of honor and pride, and I felt like I had accomplished something when I saw that he banned me. I really did. There were tears welled up in my eyes of of just gratitude, that I would never have to hear this moron again. I didn't want to be the one to actually do it because I think it's childish. I don't usually block people. I just debate them and beat them in debate. And if I meet them in the street, I slap them across the face. But he bans or blocks people apparently. Big Mike, he's an idiot. But I don't know what he had to say about this because he's blocked me. But Ben Shapiro didn't even really know who Tommy Robinson was, and it's these kind of establishment conservatives that are also going to bring a lot of ruin to the conservative, to the right wing movement. These guys who don't even know who the real leaders, because as they've often said, the battle for free speech is often fought on the fringes, on the outside, and when you don't even know who the main players are, people like Tommy Robinson, when you don't even know anything about them, yet you claim to be part of a movement, then really how dedicated are you? Shapiro makes a lot of money. And I think in a lot of ways that's gone to his head, and I think it's affected his effectiveness in the movement. He's more concerned with whether CNN and Fox News will allow him to be interviewed than whether he's actually supporting those that he claims to support. So I just wanted to bring you this news about Tommy Robinson and what's going on in Europe. Get involved. Get involved. This is our lives, and this is our future, and this is our children's future. And if Tommy Robinson dies, he will die as a martyr. And it won't be long before it'll be us also in that prison cell where Tommy died. That's how fast it can happen. If it happened fast in Germany, it can happen fast here. It can happen fast anywhere. So, get involved. Get involved. Stop sitting on your butt in this cush little life that we all have, because it'll disappear at the snap of a finger. Get involved. That's all I have for now. Good night, and God be with you.